Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Stacy Leigh, Director of the Open Book Program of Pan American Center, and on behalf of the members and the staff of Pan American Center, I welcome you to Telling the Whole Story, a celebration of writers of color. This is an evening of readings and discussion meant to bear glorious witness to the fact that a new crop of writers is growing American letters, growing it in strength, growing it in breadth, and growing it in power. Starting off our celebration of the 2005 Beyond Margin Award winners is Pan American Center's Vice President, Paul Auster.
Hi, everyone. So welcome to our event, a celebration of writers of color telling the whole story. Elizabeth Nunez, chair of the Penn Open Book Committee, and I present this evening of readings and discussion as an introduction to the work and worlds of this year's Penn Beyond Margins Award winners. Joining us in the celebration are special guests, writers Colin Channer and Esmeralda Santiago, who will read from works by our featured writers, Faith Adiele, Raquel Cepeda, Lan Samantha Chang, Lolita Hernandez, and Ishle Yi Park. Ladies and gentlemen, Elizabeth Nunez.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I have a very easy job to do this evening, mostly because of Stacy Leigh, who is just a crackerjack administrator, and also we really want to thank Paul Auster for coming to this program today and sharing a lot of what we're going to do. Just a little bit about Penn Open Book Committee. The first chair of that committee was Walter Mosley. And after Walter, Thulani Davis chaired the committee, and then I've been chairing the committee for about 6 years now. What we do is we try to bring meritorious works by writers of color to the public. We want to find a way to bring these great works, as you're going to hear this evening from our very talented winners. We want to let the public be more aware of their work. And we do several things. We have panel discussions, which we've had in the past. I'm going to say something about one of the other things before I talk about the Beyond Margins Awards program. We do a program on WBAI. We call it First Sundays with Writers. If you ever happen to be listening on WBAI at 11 o'clock in the morning, you would hear me having discussions with many of the writers, and they've just really been very spirited discussions. The last one we had was with one of our winners, Ishle Yi Park. But we've had people like Mary Sconde, Howard French, Sapphire, Jane Cortez. We've had just Mina Alexander. We've had a wonderful roster of writers that we discuss their work, and we have them read on the program. And as a consequence, and it's a call-in program, and as a consequence, more and more people are getting familiar with these names. The first award we gave for Beyond Margins was 1999. Our award winners have been Mina Alexander, Luis Francia, Joy Harjo, Victor Laval, Nellie Rosario, Lila Halaby, Suki Kim, Nasji, Willie Podermo, and April Reynolds. As you can see, these are just really well-deserving writers who we have awarded the Penn Beyond Margins Award. This year, we were fortunate enough to have some really brilliant judges who worked tirelessly reading quite a number of books for nothing, meaning no pay, just out of the goodness of their heart. And so we really want to thank these judges, and they are Brenda M. Green, Marcella Landress, Rosemary Robotham, Frank Zhu, and Francisco Aragon. So Please join me in thanking our judges. Our winners have been published in all different, by very different groups of publishers. They represent independent publishers, commercial publishers, small presses, and large presses. So we don't discriminate on what press published you. What we are looking for is really good writing, just wonderful writing by writers of color that, as again, I say, we want to bring to the attention of the public. We've done these award events several times, and I can tell you they've always been just, you're in for a really wonderful treat this evening. Just want to tell you about the 2006 award. The submission deadline is December 30th, 2005, which is really, you have less than a month if you're interested, or if your publisher would let us know. And you can call the PEN American Center to get information about that. And just because I know the number by heart, I'll give it to you. 212-334-1660, and it's extension 109. You can speak to Stacy Leigh. And without further ado, let me read the biography of the two readers who'll be reading from the works of our winners. They are first Colin Channer, who is the author of 2 novels, a novella, and a collection of short stories, Passing Through. His first novel, Waiting in Vain, was selected as a 1998 Critics' Choice by the Washington Post. His novella, I'm Still Waiting, was published in the best-selling volume, Got to Be Real. Colin Channer was born and raised in Jamaica. He returns there frequently, and he is the founder and artistic director of the only annual literary festival in the English-speaking Caribbean, the Calabash International Literary Festival. Esmeralda Santiago is going to be our second reader. She is the eldest of 11 children. She spent her childhood in Puerto Rico. With her mother and siblings, she moved to New York in 1961 at the age of 13. She attended junior high school in Brooklyn and the Performing Arts High School in Manhattan. After the extraordinary years described in her memoirs, When I Was Puerto Rican, and Almost a Woman, and The Turkish Lover, she graduated from Harvard University and received a master's degree from Sarah Lawrence College. Esmeralda Santiago is also the author of America's Dream and is co-author of Last Christmas, Favorite Latino Authors Share Their Holidays. Am I right, Stacy, in having our readers come to speak? I'm reading all my... No. Good, that's why I have to depend on Stacy. So, ladies and gentlemen, we bring back to the podium Paul Auster.
We're going to be playing peekaboo all night. Faith Adiele is the daughter of a single mother of Finnish and Swedish heritage and an absent Nigerian father. She was born in a home for unwed mothers and raised as a sole black girl in a small farming community in Washington State. She started traveling internationally at age 15. After 2 years of attending Harvard on scholarship, Adiele proudly, in retrospect, flunked out and fled to Southeast Asia. There, she shaved her head and eyebrows, took temporary ordination vows, which included eating a single daily meal, abstaining from speaking or using money, and striving toward 19 hours of mindfulness, and moved into the forest to become Thailand's first black Buddhist nun. Meeting Faith, Adiele's memoir of grappling with matters of culture and spirit, grew out of the journal Faith kept while ordained. Journal entries are incorporated into the margins of the book, along with found text in a design influenced by the Talmud. Faith Adiele is a graduate of Harvard University. She went back. Lesley University, University of Iowa's Writers Workshop, and the University of Iowa's nonfiction writing program. Her essays and memoirs on travel and culture have been published in Plowshares, Essence, Ms., Tricycle, Transition, an International Journal, the Seattle Times, and other publications. Her writing has been included in several anthologies, including Gumbo, New Black Writing, The Best Women's Travel Writing, 2005, and Best Buddhist Writing of 2005. A popular featured speaker, she is assistant professor of English at the University of Pittsburgh. Esmeralda Santiago will read from Faith Adiele's memoir, Meeting Faith.
At age 15, I had made it into the final round of applicants for the Rotary Club International Exchange Program. After I plowed through a barrage of questions about global affairs and cultural sensitivity, my answers honed sharp with teenage determination, the selection committee invited my mother into the Holiday Inn conference room. Together, we did a tag team performance about my upbringing, how she supplemented my public school education with homeschooling from her old college history and anthropology and religion textbooks, how I'd petitioned the school board to be allowed to study both Spanish and French, how we dressed in makeshift rebosos and saris and dashikis for our monthly United Nations Day dinners, and tried recipes for crepes and piroshki and kimchi from the Time Life International Cookbook series at the library, how neither of us expected me to be homesick. We dissembled a bit when it came to my picky palate. After all, we both knew that when push came to shove, I'd eat blood soup and fermented fish paste and roasted beetles. The Rotarians shot approving glances around the table, and I could tell I had the scholarship. A pleasant-faced, well-groomed man raised his hand. I have one last question. Do you anticipate any problems stemming from Faith's race? Most of the world assumes that Americans are white. He smiled. We, of course, know that's not the case, but how will you handle those expectations? My eyes sought out my white mother, who blinked her icy Scandinavian blues. Had she forgotten I was black, or was she getting ready to take him out, despite his reasonable phrasing? That's an interesting question, she said. Faith's blackness never even occurred to me until I was waiting there in the hall and noticed that every other applicant was white. I held my breath, willing this to be the one battle she walked away from. We had a chance. She was apple-cheeked and blue-eyed and cow-licked, a farmer's daughter like their own mothers, and looked genuinely rueful about her discovery. As I braved feverishly, she let out a slow chuckle. The Rotarians followed suit. Then it was my turn. I was ready. This was the question I had been answering all my life. Who better to represent America than I? Who was more American than the offspring of two New World Poles, a mother descended from Scandinavian immigrants and a student father from newly independent Africa? Who more up to the task of proving herself, to the task of translation? I could do it in my sleep. Every day I was an exchange student in my own country. And you, I surely intimated to the table of white men and women, imagine how progressive you will look. Afterwards, on the phone, our local Rotary Club president was ecstatic. Here we came, a tiny rural club from eastern Washington state with the only black candidate, and swept the entire Northwest Inland region, Canada included. No one has ever scored so high in adaptability, he raved to my mother. She'll be able to take her pick of countries, anywhere she wants. That night, we sipped the closest thing to champagne our town offered. All that hard work had paid off. It was simply up to me to pick. A second call came as I sat at the kitchen table, poring over Time Life's World's Greatest Religions. The Rotary advisor assigned to me sounded tentative and apologetic. "There's been a change in plans," he reported. "You're being sent to a small town in northern Thailand." He said it twice, pronouncing it once Thailand and once Thailand. In the silence of my caught breath, he pressed on. "This town, Chiang Rai, has been having problems. None of the American exchange students can adapt. They can't eat the food, learn the language, and stand the heat. They cause their host families trouble. Rotary Thailand is considering canceling the entire exchange program." "But what about getting to choose?" I demanded, finally able to speak, more concerned with equity than with the possibility of being sent to a place I knew nothing about, other than the fact I was fairly certain it did not abound with Thais. "I was told that I ranked high enough." "You did," my advisor confirmed. He sounded like a very nice guy who wished he were anywhere but on the phone with a teary teenager. "And I'm terribly sorry, but you're their last hope. If you can't adapt, they'll give up on the Thailand program." And so it began. I'd been enlisted to save Thailand.
Raquel Cepeda's anthology, And It Don't Stop, the best American hip-hop journalism of the last 25 years, is the first book of its kind, chronicling the emergence of a journalism that captured, decoded, but never reduced the power of the new music and cultural wave emerging from clubs, basements, and building stoops since the late 70s. In addition to winning the PEN Beyond Margins Award, And It Don't Stop won Raquel Cepeda a Latino Book Award for Best Arts Book. Cepeda is an award-winning journalist and cultural critic, currently contributing to People, the Associated Press, Paper, The Village Voice, Latina, and other nationally distributed publications. And over the span of 12 years has written for MTV News, USA Weekend, Source, Vibe, GQ, Spin, among other publications. A busy girl. From 2001 to 4, Cepeda served as editor-in-chief of One World, which won an Aussie Award, gold level, during her tenure. She also served as editor-in-chief of the first online destination for young urban-minded women, sayshe.com. Colin Channer will read an excerpt from Raquel Cepeda's anthology, And It Don't Stop.
We begin with the all but forgotten humble beginnings of hip hop. The graffiti artist, the breaker, the DJ, and the MC. Graffiti artists became the first jalis or storytellers of this new world of hip hop by using the New York subway cars as a means of sounding the alarm that heralded the arrival of an infectious new force. That force, later christened hip hop, was spawned from the New York City's concrete jungles in the 70s to become the ultimate expression of Black youth resistance to poverty and oppression. First in the South Bronx and then throughout each of New York's 5 boroughs and beyond, hip-hop was further embodied in the breakers' psychedelic dance movements, the DJ's rhythmic party beats, and the MC's poignant and stirring lyrics. From the outset, it was clear that this hip-hop was no fad. It was instead the rumblings of a movement strong enough and necessary enough to evade all efforts to quiet its call, including not only Mayor Edward I. Koch's declared war on our beloved Jalis, but also President Reagan's failed Reagan Revolution, which, while intending to bring to the inner cities the great confident roar of American progress and growth and optimism, in fact did little to give our crack-infested urban centers the necessary facelift. Hip-hop would survive these early attacks and grow like an errant vine to overtake America's sound garden, and at once become the needed didactic response, if you will, to the schisms plaguing the direct descendants of the civil rights generation. Hip-hop, like rock music in the 1960s, morphed into the dominant rebel yell of youth culture in New York City. Chuck D, frontman for Public Enemy, one of the most influential and dynamic groups of our history in the making, said it best in a controversial statement after the release of their classic album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, in which he dubbed hip-hop the Black CNN. He believed that what rap music related was happening in the inner city in a way that mainstream media could not project or even understand. Hip-hop journalism built on the tradition of hip-hop as a societal reflector. The hip-hop journalists not only understood, but were themselves participants also aching to be understood. This collection then is a slice of the rousing perspective of journalists who sent dispatches from hip-hop's epicenter, who took their roles as historians, chronicling the culture, defining the tenets that made the genre become such a powerful voice, and pointing out its contradictions and its potency at once quite seriously. By the time Rapper's Delight was released, hip-hop, which was initially being covered as just listings and blurbs in the black press, had surprised us all and gone pop, sprouting up and out of every crevice of the planet where youth culture expresses itself through art, music, dance, and fashion. As with most things that go pop in American culture, what started out primarily as a Black and Latino subculture has been uprooted and co-opted by mainstream marketers who neatly package everything from soft drinks to game shows and fast foods. The mainstreaming of hip-hop has made it almost impossible to distinguish it from a commercial jingle. Still, hip-hop has done more for our generation, whose core demographic is now in its 30s and 40s, than what even basketball has done for kids in the inner city. For better or for worse, the wild success of rap music has created not only a handful of coveted positions for the lucky few who've managed to flex their lyrical mastery in front of the mic, it has also created positions in recording, publishing, fashion, film, and journalism. These articles are a humble attempt to capture moments that have contributed to shaping the culture. It's important to capture these lyrical portraits, these moments that helped shape the new pop culture, hip-hop, because not doing so is to ignore a significant volume of American history.
Lan Samantha Chang once described her education as a, quote, grand tour. She received a bachelor's degree in East Asian Studies from Yale, a master's in public administration from Harvard, and finding that her previous studies had done little to dampen her desire to write, Chang attended the University of Iowa Writers' Workshop, where she received an MFA. In a few weeks, Chang returns to the workshop in Iowa as its new director. Lan Samantha Chang's fiction has appeared in the Atlantic Monthly, Plowshares, and in the Best American Short Stories. She is the author of the award-winning fiction collection Hunger, and her work has been translated into more than half a dozen languages. Chang traces characters from her novel Inheritance back to a chapter-length narrative written while she was a Stanford University Stegner Fellow in 1994. Says Chang, I spent all of '98 writing the first draft. My goal had been to try to do a draft of something 400 pages long, which was really hard. I ended up rewriting and rewriting and rewriting for years and years and years. I threw out 400 pages in the process of writing the novel. The result of her diligence is the beautifully crafted work Inheritance. Narrated by a daughter seeking to make sense of her family's history, Inheritance depicts devotion and betrayal in a small and a grand scale. The story of sisters divided against one another unfolds within the larger story of China's 20th century struggles against Japanese invaders and communist revolutionaries alike. Chang uses politics, history, social currents, and the personal to explore love, loyalty, and the price that must be paid for each. Esmeralda Santiago reads selections from Lan Samantha Chang's novel, Inheritance.
The knowledge that there was no more money brought one freedom, There was no business to look after, and the family could leave. Junan paid a visit to Charlie Kong's shabby shop. Charlie maintained his cheerfulness, although he was a little thinner, as the shortage of wine was making itself known even to the most devoted. Now he made a few extra yuan by working an illegal telegraph transmitter in the back room. Dear husband, I will bring the family to Chongqing, Junan. He wrote back almost immediately. Junan, stay there for the sake of our family, your husband. That night, she found spots of blood in her underpants. She took a breath. She should not have moved around so much. She would have to be more careful. She kept off her feet for days. She lay immobile, furious, although her mind was as relentless as a bamboo trap. Her body had failed her once again. In the next few days, the smallest anxieties, tiny exertions, bending, angling, staircases, caused her to bleed. She had her room moved downstairs. The baby was slow to come, and by late October, she was still imprisoned in her room. This forced passivity was more than she could bear. Liang had left behind a few things to be mended and refurbished. One afternoon, she began to work on a jacket. She thought that it might soothe her mind to focus on a task, something simple and repetitive, such as fastening on a button. She found her sewing box and took the jacket to the seat below the window, where the pear tree with its ripening fruit moved slightly in the wind. It was a bright autumn day, so clear that each veined leaf, each frost-killed vine lay bare and etched itself upon her eye. He had left the jacket rolled into a ball. It was rumpled and covered with dust. She put her finger into her brass thimble, shaped like a ring, and threaded her needle with the familiar grasshopper-colored silk. She found the right place, then pushed the needle through the fabric and picked up the button. Ever since Liang's first promotion, she had felt a vague threat. Now, the uneasy feeling, so long denied, breached her calm. The promotion, although a welcome one, had brought about a change between them, a lowering of her status, and although she might continue to bear him healthy children, bear him a son, the son would only cement her present position. Soon he would be promoted again. She could see no way of reclaiming her old status. Now the veil was pulled from her eyes. It was like being a new bride, stepping out of the jolting, terrifying ride of the marriage palanquin and seeing, for the first time, the agent of her fate. She thought of how Liang had appeared to her in the early days of their marriage, charming, pleasing, the graceful span of his dark shoulders outlined against the pillows. He had seemed so easy to get along with, sleek and smiling, like a happy guest, a man to be viewed with fondness and a little disdain. She had come to see her husband as sweet and vulnerable, a little clumsy at home, somewhat under her power, and desiring her approval. Now she knew her own perceptions had eroded from misuse. She had come to factor her power into everything they did, into the way she saw herself. She had not known that her belief in her influence would backfire, that she would become so attached to the effect she had over him. She sewed carefully, creating a shank when she was done and tying the ends of the threads in a series of strong knots. She examined the other buttons, discovered two that hung loose, snipped them off, and sewed them back on as well. She enjoyed the feeling of the needle pushing sharp against her thimble, in and out, in and out. There, the jacket was presentable again. She needed only to have it cleaned. Junan saw what looked like a tea stain on the front. She held the jacket closer. Her pregnancy had sharpened her senses. Had she smelled something? She pressed the jacket to her face. What could it be? It seemed to her that she had caught for half an instant a lingering scent, a stranger's perfume, the sickening fragrance of tea roses. Junan pulled her face away from the jacket and sat still for several minutes, careful not to do herself the violence of sudden breath.
In the 1980s, Detroit suffered a crisis in its automotive industry, resulting in historic plant shutdowns and loss of employment for tens of thousands. Lolita Hernandez, a 30-year member of the United Auto Workers Union, worked for decades at the giant General Motors Cadillac plant, dismantling test engines. It is about this plant and its people that she writes in her short story collection, Autopsy of an Engine, and other stories from the Cadillac plant. Great title. Hernandez wrote Autopsy of an Engine as her adios to the, quote, crazy raw madness of a large industrial factory, her memorial to a fast-fading world. Although she is a longtime labor activist, Hernandez's collection reflects worlds beyond the assembly line. Quote, these stories are about more than steel and grime. They reflect all of the diversity I live with daily. My motherhood, my daughterhood, my friendships, my proletarian political sensibilities, and the many cultural influences that have shaped me. Lolita Hernandez received her Master of Fine Arts from the Vermont School of Writing at Norwich University. Her poetry has been widely anthologized, and her stories have appeared in the Iowa Review, the Michigan Quarterly Review, and Seeds, the biannual journal of Sisters of Color. She cites as creative influences writers such as Jamaica Kincaid and Robert Antoni, as well as the rhythms of Trinidad and St. Vincent, which come down to her through family language and music. Colin Channer will come back to read an excerpt from Lolita Hernandez's story collection, Autopsy of an Engine.
An engine block fell off the line 1 hour before lunch. It jumped off the light blue oil-stained stand on the conveyor. It thumpered itself away from the exact spot programmed for it by the broadcast system. It boogalooed its way from its spot between the block in front of it that was scheduled for a green Brown and the one behind it, a brown sedan DeVille. It tumbled onto the wooden floorboard of the even side of the piston section as if refusing that sweet yellow Eldorado waiting for it across the street in final assembly. The woman who checked the piston rings observed the panorama of craziness up and down the line from her assembly station. She said to herself, we making real bacchanal here today, as she lifted number 1 piston from the tray in front of her. She twirled its rings to check for damage and strained to hear the tinny tinkling of the rings slapping in their grooves. They sounded light and airy next to the thumping and all the jumping up and down from the thin young men behind her. She was always back to back, bottom to bottom with a whole piston screw as she shuffled from end to end of her 8-foot zone. That short stretch didn't give her enough exercise to shake off the bowls of pilau she bought for lunch each day. So she grew big on bufuto, as they would say in her native Trinidad, and every day found her dancing cheek to cheek with some slim young man shooting the same piston she had checked with foot. These days her arms hung wide by her side, not close to her heart, and her breast nestled in her lap like the 3 children she left back home when she came to this country to get a job so she could feed them because her husband had left her and gone to another island. She told some of her co-workers, he went Cuba, at least that's what they say, but who knows, men them days travel however they want. Just like these foolish young men run up and down this line when they get a little bit of brown juice in them. Before long, she found herself getting into the swing of things. This is one jumbie jamboree going on here. And she began singing an old calypso song, her mother's favorite, back to back, belly to belly, I don't give a damn, I done dead already. She danced the trays over the roller conveyor to their destination on the main line. She could feel the rattling from the trays traveling up her arms and noise from the section behind her pummeling her bones as if she were one big conga drum vibrating in time to the bouncing trays and piston rhythms. Shoop, number 1 piston in. Shoop, number 4 piston in. Shoop, Number 3 piston in wee foot back to back, belly to belly in a jumbie jamboree. Since she had been at the plant, she'd never seen such a commotion. It was as if all of them, that whole section, those shooting pistons, the torque checkers, the crank man, even she, it was as if all of them were loaded up with cowitch, a stinging Trinidad plant, and had to dig deep into all parts of their bodies to relieve the itching. It seemed to her that they had scratched and scratched until they reached inside their souls, and everything was falling off of them. Tiredness from the pistons, tiredness from the wiring of the air guns, tiredness from someone always banging on the line and yelling, "Wake up, mother!" She wondered why the foreman was nowhere to be seen when the engine fell off the line, but told herself, better for us, let he keep his tail wherever it is. And she shuffled her feet and swung her big bottom right to left, back to back, belly to belly, shaking off the lonely days without her children and the ache for the sight of bright red anthuriums growing straight out of the ground and salt breeze of my yarrow hitting her face. I don't give a damn, I done dead already. No matter what ached in any of them, in her opinion, that morning was the most exciting in the history of Cadillac piston installation. It was the first time an engine had fallen off the line. When the two installers grabbed the engine back and front, said, "Heave-ho!" and swung it onto its stand, the whole section broke out in raucous applause. The two responsible for replacing the engine bowed low and swept their arms to the floor as if they were courtiers. She bellowed, "Come on, boys, let us send this engine down the line in fine style," and they all joined her for a chorus of Jumbie Jamboree. Their voices were so loud and strong, they upped the speed of the line half a cycle. They didn't seem to care one bit because the renegade engine was headed out of their section on its way to the cam, timing stage chain, and front cover stations. Come on, boys, back to back, belly to belly, I don't care a damn, done dead already.
Ishle, she has performed at over 300 venues in the U.S. and abroad, not including appearances in 51 cities as a touring cast member of the Tony Award-winning Russell Simmons Deaf Poetry Jam. Amazing. Esmeralda Santiago will read selections from The Temperature of This Water by Ishle Yi Park. Thank you.
Let me tell you about Suja. She is the real owner of Utopia Fishery. All the business is conducted in her black and white composition notebook on a big-ass calculator, Texas Instruments too complicated, numbers too small to see without glasses, and in her head. She has 2 children raised in the States, one a natural childbirth, the other pulled out against her will by a Roosevelt Hospital doctor who used her as an experiment for his students because she couldn't speak English. President of her class in high school, graduate of Seoul University with a degree in English, she reads Beloved at night after she does the bills on the flat kitchen table when the house is asleep and there is no one to bother her. She smokes Kent's 100s in closets and basements and empty cars. Her hands heal. She has healing hands. Suja's husband, John Suk, is the official owner of the fish store. His name used to be splashed across sports pages every Sunday in Korea. He was a national rugby star, and most people back home know who he is. He drew all the posters and the handmade fish paintings taped up to the windows. At parties, he is a hit. Best karaoke singer, loud voice, good Watso player. Customers hate him for being so loud. He does not drink, smoke, or gamble. He drives down to Fulton every morning at 3 to pick up fresh fish, had done so for the past 25 years. He cannot talk to his son, but is trying, really trying. His son, Sung Ho, just scored 1,400 on his SATs without even trying, without even going to school for the past 2 years. He sent out his college apps yesterday. He is currently on 5 years probation for crimes committed while he was part of GS, a Chinese gang. As a child, he was always being shut up or cut off. Once, a group of 12 white boys jumped him in front of their house, banged his head into the back bumper of their green Impala. They took turns spitting big wads into his face and calling him Chink. Suja went to this house to defend her son, and the parents of the white boys would not let her on the porch. They threatened to let loose their Rottweiler if she did not get off their property. Sung calls himself a Chink now, jokingly, with his Chinese friends, and he does not run down these hateful blocks anymore. He walks like he owns them. Let me tell you about you. You come in here with your fingernails gleaming and outstretched. You've just had them done. You have more makeup on your face this Wednesday afternoon than my mother would wear in a whole month. You are 2 years younger than her, but look 10 years older. You wrinkle your nose at the stench we work in. You say hello to Nick, of course. He compliments your beauty, the new coat. You ask him how business is doing. He talks like he is the owner. Nick goes in the back for his lunch, then you bother my father. It is clear you don't like each other. You haggle about the price, make him stick his arm into the freezing tank about 20 times until he gets 2 lobsters that are just the right size, and I ring you up. For some reason, you notice me for the first time. Oh, Susie, you call my mother by the wrong name. Is this your daughter? She says yes, and you proceed to talk about me as if I weren't there. She's so cute. She looks just like you. You are surprised to hear that I go to college. Sung walks you to your car, holding your bags. Put them on the floor, you order. And since you're feeling generous, you palm him a $1 tip. You leave, and life goes on. You are one of 76 customers a day, 237 days a week. Not the worst, not the best.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we bring up the panel of the winners of the 2005 Beyond Margin Awards, along with Colin Channer and Elizabeth Nunez, we're missing one of our winners. Well, actually, we're missing 2 of our winners. Faith Adiele was not able to join us today. Ishle Yi Park intends to join us today, but it is her lucky day because she is currently winning an award with the Asian American Literary Awards across town, so she'll be joining us directly. At this time, I'd like to welcome up Mr. Channer, Dr. Nunez, and the winners of 2005 Beyond Margin Awards.
Hello again. And again, I'm Elizabeth Nunez. And just before we start, I really want to thank the Executive Director of Pan American Center, Michael Roberts, who really makes this all possible. I mean, we've been a fledgling committee and program, just every year moving, getting a little stronger and stronger. And Mike Roberts has really put his energy behind this and made it a really strong Pan American Center program. So I really want to thank Mike. And of course, you've seen Stacy. Colin, you're going to help me with this.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm not just here enjoying the gin.
Okay. Or the vodka. So let's start with, I think we just had some really remarkable readings, and we'll just start with each writer just saying a little bit about herself and about her work. So Why don't we start with you?
I thought you read the bio.
No. No, go ahead, talk about your work.
The same thing that you heard in the bio, plus I'm currently working on my first film. I'm directing a documentary called Bling, A Planet Rock, about hip-hop's obsession with diamonds and bling culture and how that affected the war in Sierra Leone and West Africa. I'm taking several rappers over there next month. Hopefully they don't chicken out at the last minute, to meet people that survived the 12-year civil war in Sierra Leone and try to make it cool to buy clean diamonds.
Wow. Wow. See, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. What about you? Say,
Hi, what was in my bio, plus,
what was it? They intend to embarrass me, right?
I finished my novel and took a little time off from writing to think about what to do next. And I have two things in mind, but I'm not sure if they're the same thing, and I'm not entirely sure what they are. The first is I've been working on a story about a woman living in the Midwest, an immigrant, who takes driving lessons. So far, that's about 40 pages long, and I can't tell if it's the arc it will become something, which is what the other thing I wanted to do, which is something short and dark, or not. So it could be part of something long and multifaceted, but I'm not sure right now.
And what about you, Lolita? I have to say that those Trinidadian expressions that that Colin believed he was reading with his Jamaican accent, I know, like it's we foot.
I know,
we
but
foot.
you like we food now.
But Colin,
Back, belly to belly.
I don't care a damn. I
Done that already.
But we allowed Colin to read it because, we let the Jamaicans have their time.
You know what? I think I want to give an extra hand here for Colin. He did a fabulous job with that.
He did a good job.
A fabulous job. I was very,
We just
very
put him
happy.
on notice that, Go ahead.
No, I got to schmooze up to Colin. I'm not going to put it
Rasta don't
there.
say calypso,
I got
no?
something to talk to him about. Ishle is here.
Yes, but tell us about
Okay.
you.
Wow! Congratulations.
Well, what happened?
Oh, I was at another ceremony.
know that.
Oh, okay, and they just went long, so I had to run over here with my family, and so I'm very sorry I'm late. Thank you for having me.
Well, Lolita was going.
Okay. I still work not Cadillac. I still work for General Motors. I'm off the tools now, and I work specifically for the UAW, and in a program that essentially has me dealing with a number of the plants, just sort of organizing them to maintain their equipment. That sounds really weird, doesn't it? But I am a skilled trades person in the engineering end of it, is sort of building prototype cars or tearing prototype cars down.
And what about the writing?
The writing, I'm getting to that right now. The writing, I think what's happening with me now, I'm beginning to discover that I write out of grief, because we're going through a lot of grief in General Motors as more plants are being closed, and we're going through a lot of grief in the city of Detroit where I live. So I found myself now working on another collection I'm calling the Detroit Stories, that essentially is dealing with the death of Detroit, or what I'm perceiving as the death of Detroit. And I don't know if there's going to be any more singing in it, but.
No. I had the wonderful opportunity to interview Ishle Yi Park at WBAI, and we had a really great morning. So tell us a little about yourself here
Okay.
and your work.
Hello, how are you guys? My name is Ishle Yi Park. I'm 28 years old, Korean American woman born and raised in Queens, New York. My parents have been working in a fish store for pretty much my whole life, so my mother is actually working tonight and can't be at any of the ceremonies, but my father was gracious enough to come, and my aunts as well. So
Oh,
I'm
they're
very
here.
happy to have
Oh,
them in the
cool.
audience. Yes, yay!
Okay, so there goes Colin.
Yeah, I have a question, Lan. You're now the director of the Iowa Writing Program.
In January.
Yeah, in January, right? So essentially, you're going to become the person that almost every aspiring writer wants to meet. What does that mean to you?
Whoa. I'd love to meet the aspiring writers. I mean, it's very exciting to me.
Right.
I didn't realize how exciting it would be to be an adult. It happened when my second book came out. All of a sudden, I sometimes would read second instead of first at readings, and it was a real big change. And
Right.
I was teaching a bunch of undergraduates and started to feel like I was seeing what literature is looking like in 5 or 10 years, and everything became exciting. And I think this is just an extension of that. I do.
What do you think it will mean in terms of, well, one having time to write?
Oh, actually, I think it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that there must be some kind of secret about this job I don't know, because the last 4 people who had it basically kept it for their whole lives and either died in the position or retired. So it must not be a terrible job. Also, it's in Iowa City, and the thing about Iowa City is a friend of mine used to say she wishes that she could fly there to do her errands. It's much easier to live there because there just isn't as much traffic. And
And so you think you'll get time to write? I guess
I
that's
do.
what Colin's.
I do think I'm gonna have
Colin's
time.
question is how to balance. How do you
I
balance?
think it's important for the program to feel that their faculty is productive. I mean, we do have faculty that are slow, like Marilyn Robinson, 1 book every 23 years. But she is in her own way productive, and I think it's important to the students to have an example ahead of them of somebody who's a working writer. And so the program is making every effort to make sure that I'm going to have time to keep doing it.
Okay. Well, I'd like to ask a question of Raquel. Is it Raquel?
It is Raquel.
Okay, Raquel Cepeda. How did you get interested in this subject of hip hop?
I don't have an answer for that. I was born in New York City, so I kind of didn't have a choice but to become part of the ebb and flow of hip hop. From the time I was very young, I grew up with a lot of the rappers and whatever. I used to hang out in Washington Square Park. I was down with a crew called the Native Tongue, really long time ago. I came into the industry through De La Soul, which is an old school kind of rap group. I have a cousin in the group, and it just one thing led to another, and then from there I went into the spoken word. But then I saw Russell Simmons at the Feds, and I said, this is gonna mainstream, so I stopped doing that. And then I had a beautiful daughter and wrote and just, I really don't have an answer of how I got into hip hop, you know what I mean? It just is. I was born in '73, so it kind of just is,
Can I ask you, Raquel, can I ask you if
Yes.
you're happy with the state of hip hop?
I'm really not listening to, I am very happy in my house when I listen to hip hop because I listen to a lot of old school stuff and I listen to a lot of international hip hop. I don't think that America is the epicenter of hip hop anymore. I think it's more of it's more interesting internationally. So the artists in Sierra Leone and in France and Germany are pretty interesting to me right now. But the state of hip hop now, I kind of it's really, I think right now hip hop is very embryonic. We don't know where it's going to be at in another 10, 15 years. But right now it's kind of a blurred line between what is hip hop and what is like Britney Spears and pop music. So I kind of don't pay attention to it.
I have a question for Ishle, mostly because we had that really great discussion for almost an hour on the BAI program, and I was just really struck by the way you brought home to us what's really happening in the Korean life and what it really means to work in the fish store, in the grocery store, and the kind of discrimination and the kind of prejudice you live through. Could you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think I was just basically writing about my community and people who I love and people who surrounded me, and they happen to be a lot of working class Koreans. My parents owned a fish store, and my uncles either worked in grocery stores or worked in richer Korean people's grocery stores and had nail salons and stuff, and so I was just basically writing what I knew, and I feel like I didn't see myself reflected in any type of literature in terms of other Korean American work. The things that I read, honestly, it was talking about maybe a different class of Korean Americans as well. Maybe the only thing that talked about the Korean Americans I grew up with was something like Patty Kim in A Cab Called Reliable. But I just wanted to reflect, I guess, or try to write about the complexity and the beauty of the people whose lives were around me and the people who inspired me, including my mother, my aunt, my father, and just how incredibly difficult it is to come to another country as an immigrant and all the different things that you struggle through, and also the many struggles that they had with me as a rebellious second generation, Korean American girl growing up in Queens. So I wanted to reflect that honestly, to pay tribute, but also to tell the truth in some ways about some of the things that are harder to deal with within our own community. And that, for me, was very hard, and I fought and I warred with people in my own family over it, but I feel like it comes from a place of love, and I think in the end, now they're starting to realize that a little more, and I think that is very difficult to do, but I think if you do love your community, then you're honest with them, so you don't just write,
Only the good stuff.
Yeah, only the good
The pretty stuff, yeah. I find your work is so courageous, really, and so beautiful. I just really love it.
Thank you.
Colin?
Yeah, I have a question for Lolita. One of my favorite stories in Autopsy of an Engine is Float, a story about a woman who works in the plant and she has a breakdown, more than one. What was the genesis of that character?
That character is actually a composite of not just women, but men in the plant who I like to say had a variety of creative ways of trying to deal with the harsh realities of the plant. Although if you talk to anyone who's from Cadillac, they could give you the exact name of that person. In reality, that's not, that person represents a composite. And I think it was battle fatigue. Battle fatigue, and you'd see it, and you'd have to sort of work around it yourself. You'd have to find ways to deal with it yourself, and sometimes I think I was that woman too.
Right. One of the things that struck me about the story is that the character, who is unnamed, her descent into insanity just seemed so normal, so regular, so possible, that I started worrying about myself. As I was sitting on the subway going, am I sitting too still? Am I beginning to imagine myself as a rock? No, it can happen.
And it's true. Actually, if you went in the plant, you wonder if I think it would seem very crazy to other people. The methods of communication that are developed and how you, I don't know how you adapt to these machines and how you're viewed at. By supervision, by management, but then I don't know, like coming out in the world here, I don't know if it's any better. It just seems like the plant is a microcosm of the larger world. It is a city. You can do anything that you want to do in the plant. You can get married there. You can get anything. You can buy your house there. You can build it. You can do anything that you want. You can get it in the plant. You never have to leave it to live your life.
You can buy.
You can do anything you want to do in the plant. You can do 1 year, as a matter of fact, I did my entire Christmas shopping in the plant because we were working.
The stuff there.
Oh yeah, put your orders in, get your liquor, get your other stuff. Get your groove on. You can build your cars. You can do everything in that plant. People don't realize it's a city, so the craziness that you see there is just it's the compactness of having like the entire world around you, like crushing in on you all the time.
This is something I'd like to throw out to anybody. I'm, as you might guess, not American, and my mother still sends me money because she doesn't consider being a writer a job. So it's a larger question about permission, right? I mean, do your families regard what you do as a real profession, or are they still a little bit suspicious? Anybody? It's for anybody.
No, they did not regard what I did as a real job until I think I just got this job. I mean, I think they're finally. And there was an article in the Chinese American newspaper, and they finally believe that I'm doing something legitimate, even though I'm not a doctor.
That's so funny, because that's the exact same thing that happened to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't validated until all of a sudden this Korean newspaper wrote an article, and then my grandfather clipped it out, and all of a sudden he had proof that I was actually doing something.
And their friends are like, we saw your daughter.
In the Korean newspaper, yeah.
And then it becomes okay.
My mother keeps telling me she's praying. Praying for me.
To get a job.
Yes, to find a job.
Well, we want to turn it over to you, the audience, if you have any questions for our panelists. We don't have a standing mic. We'll pass the mic to you if you just identify yourself, if you have a question for any of our panelists. Okay, so there's a question over here. Somebody's going to bring you a mic.
I just wanted to hear the answers from Lolita and Raquel to that same question. Of your family or your community acknowledging, or how they acknowledge or lack of acknowledgement of your work.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna say something that it's kind of the flip for me. They wondered why I was in the factory. Because I was college educated, but I finally realized I was smelling the roses, plus I was involved in some politics and so on. So I remember my father telling me one time, you know, you could have picked up the pen. And I told him, and he said, but instead you picked up the hammer. I said, well, I've picked up both the pen and the hammer. And now I think I've been around so long, much longer than these others, I mean, just in terms of life, that I think I haven't had that same problem in terms of the writing. It's been, I think, something that's been well supported even by my coworkers.
Oh, good. By your coworkers, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, I'm a first-generation American. My parents are Dominican, and my stepmother's Finnish and Swedish. And she's the woman who raised me as well. And they still kind of don't know what I do. Because they're like, why are you going to Africa? Like, what, are you crazy? You know, because I'm directing and producing this documentary. So they kind of still don't get what I do. They have my book. They're like, okay. They see my articles. I think that the moment that it became real for them was when I did some talking head stuff on like VH1 or like MTV. And everybody in the neighborhood starts to talk and everything. And that validates me, even though it doesn't pay me. So it's a little weird.
I do have a question, but I'll take one from the audience first. Yes.
I just wanted to know who are your favorite authors, like from the people on the panel.
Jorge Amado. He wrote. You guys know Jorge Amado?
No, I don't. Anyhow.
He's Brazilian. He's amazing. Greg Campbell. He wrote this book called Blood Diamonds. That's kind of amazing.
What about you?
Oh, it changes all the time, but right now I think I'm really enjoying reading, let's see, Junichiro Tanizaki, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Rohinton Mystery, Dostoevsky, and I guess I read a lot of William Maxwell and Andrea Barrett lately.
Colin, why don't you answer that question too?
Well, you know, it varies. Right now, I'm revisiting Russell Banks and just getting to appreciate him all over again. Naipaul is just a fine writer.
Yes.
I'll always love Huckleberry Finn, Twain. I mean, Twain is just a very smart, funny writer. It varies from time to time.
I'm going to take the question for myself because I've just discovered a phenomenal writer, M.G. Vazanji. Does anybody know him? M.G. Vazanji.
Oh, absolutely. He's in Canada.
Yes,
Yeah.
the in-between world of Vikram Lal.
Oh, yeah, he's a great writer.
It is downright the best novel I've read in years. So there I'm telling you, Vazanji, the in-between world of Vikram Lal, it is, you know it, Mina? Oh, it is extraordinary, extraordinary novel, extraordinary. But I like Coetzee, I like Ian McEwan, I like some of Toni Morrison. I have to say I like Naipaul, though I don't like a lot of what he says. What about you?
I don't know. I think one of the biggest influences in my writing was Jorge Luis Borges. I don't know what it is. I just and Julio Cortázar has been. He's like my Bible. I keep Around the Day in 80 Worlds right by my bedside. When I get really confused and I'm getting really lost in everything, I pick it up and I read Don't Let Them or something like that, or Sylvia or something like that, and I'm good to go. It sort of puts me back on track. Other than that, I love Naipaul, and I love like there's Jamaica Kincaid. I love the language. I loved Antoni. I mean, Antoni was the one who sort of freed me up to try and
What's
use
that?
Robert-
Something in San Fernando. Is it?
Davina Trace and I can't even remember
there's
the
something in San Fernando. Anyway.
Well, that's Michael Anthony.
Yeah.
Oh, are you talking about? I'm
Carnival
talking
is
about
Robert Antoni's
Robert
last
Antoni.
one. Yeah.
Robert Antoni.
My
What about
grandmother's erotic folktales. They're very good book. That's his.
Who? Robert
Robert Antoni,
Antoni? You know, I haven't read that.
Yeah.
I'll have to get to that.
It's a dirty book written by a grandmother.
A dirty book?
Written by a grandmother.
All
Yeah.
right.
It's a good dirty book.
What about you, Ishle?
I started really getting into literature through Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, Richard Wright, but I think recently I've been working on sonnets. I've been reading like Pushkin, and yeah, so I'm loving Pushkin right now. I love Anne Carson and Oliver de la Paz. Like, there's certain poetry books that I always have by my bed, and right now I'm reading with my roommate, Madeline is Sleeping by Shirley, I can't pronounce her last name.
Sarah Shunlin
Yes.
Bynum.
And I think it's awesome so far.
You know, it's another great book. Tomorrow we wish to inform you that tomorrow we will be killed with our families, by Philip Gorovich. Yeah, that was. What's how do you pronounce it? Gorovich.
I think what you
Fantastic.
see, I think what
Haruki
you see is
Murakami.
how much writers read. How much writers read, because as we are talking here, I mean, you say you have these books by your bed that you, I mean, I have them everywhere in my house, you know. When I have breakfast, my books I'm reading while I'm having breakfast. I go to sleep with a book, I wake up with a book, I'm traveling with a book. It's just constant. And most of it, I think I read for courage, you know? Sure. Whenever you reach that low point, you read this good book and say, well, they did it. And the question I really, if you would indulge me for a minute, that I wanted to ask, that has to do with our committee itself. I mean, if the premise of our committee is bringing to the public works by writers of color, I wanted to ask our panelists, and Colin included, what kinds of problems do you think, or are there any problems that writers of color have in getting their works published and meeting an audience? I once had what I thought was a very smart man, he is still a smart man, say to me, he is white, and he said to me, well, I don't read books by writers of color because they don't have anything to do with my life. And we may laugh at that, but sometimes I think when you go into the stores and you watch people looking for books, you wonder how much of that is true or how much of that is not true, you know. And whereas I think we would probably all agree we write about humans, human beings. So anybody wants to take that?
This is actually our final question before we
Okay.
invite
Oh,
everybody
boy.
up to reception
That's
upstairs.
Do you think? I mean, it is.
I think it's a complicated. I think it's a question with a very complicated answer that maybe might be best discussed during the reception.
Okay.
Because the answer to that is the history of America.
Yes.
And we'd have to go back a very, very long time. But there must be a question from the audience that we could take. Wow, there's 75 people.
Okay, here's a question here. There's somebody here.
Oh, that one.
Question would be, why are we always assuming our audience is white? More writers of color, they're not all white, and they're facing a lot of stuff. So I think, that's my question, I guess, back.
Did you all hear that? Why are we, I have this right here.
Yeah.
I guess my question is always, why are we assuming as writers of color that our audience is always white? They're increasingly less white. And I think that's a problem with young writers of color, is that they automatically assume that, and that's something I think especially American writers of color have a problem with. They automatically assume that their audience will always be white.
I don't think
That's never, ever
I don't
entered
think-
my mind. Ever.
I honestly believe that's the problem of the publishers, not the problem of the writers. It's the publishers who, when they get the book, say, how are we going to market that book? And they're the ones who make that assumption, definitely not the writers. Wouldn't you agree?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming. And Stacy says that there's a reception, so please join us.
Thank you so much. I love yours. Okay. Thank you. Yours are all moving as well. I'm very honored.
My daughter Shali is 8 years old.
Yeah, I was gonna show you just some little blood sprays.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, let's have you sign.
Wasn't she great?
Sign. Ishle, you have to sign this.
Oh, yes, I know that festival.
And where's yours? Here, you have to sign yours.
It's very exciting. And you're doing well. I follow your. Oh, great.
So many minor Canada. They come out every year.
Yeah, right.
Every year.
When is it this year?
I'll get another one.
Terrific. That's great. That's great.
It's not a problem.
If nobody else buys it, I'll come back and buy it. I just don't want to.
You know what? If they're interested in that, we'll do the same that we did for you. Direct you to the bookstore.
Used to work for them.
Yeah, the Rodney, sure.
They told me you used to have a real naughty word for your column. Something that meant bookers or something.
She's such a good Christian. She's such a good Christian.
I know, that's why I always tell her all these shocking things.
Oh, okay,
And she
okay.
said, Victoria, what did you just say to me?
Right.
And I repeated.
Well, in Sierra Leone, that's very hard to do. There's a lot of unemployment. It's a very desperate country. Have you been there? It's a very, they're in a very desperate, yes. It's a very desperate situation over there. And I feel like, there's a possibility, a very big possibility that they'll slide back into civil war if something doesn't get done about the joblessness. That's like what it comes down to, So.
I think that, I know that you're going to do a documentary
I'm trying, yes. It's very expensive. No, we've been there once. We're going to go back, hopefully, next month. Be there? This time, probably like 11, 12 days. But we have a lot of shooting to do. We have to go back again. Yeah, we're going to try to take 2 trips at least. But I would like to establish relationships with people that I met there and go back, It's a beautiful country. They're right for tourism, but it's just not, the structure is just, yeah. But they own 15 islands. There's 15 islands off of Sierra Leone. The beaches are gorgeous. Everything is so beautiful, but they're so devastated. It's depressing.
And the problem is that the interest of the government is always in contrast with what the people. But another amazing thing was the next country that is just at the border is
Liberia.
just started research study. Woman as a president, isn't that amazing?
Not necessarily, because if you're corrupt, you're corrupt. It doesn't matter, you know. They say, you know, I have to see first what she's doing. Not, I can't judge her based on gender.
No.
I gotta, you know.
But it's very different.
I have to say, the great thing about a newsletter is that it forces me to read writers like this. And also,
you know,
here to hear everybody tonight.
Yeah, it's really good to hear other people.
Right.
You may look like an old man.
Oh man, thanks for coming out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cool. Hey. And the last book is called Passing Through.
Yeah, I'm a complete mess. Sure. And I end up standing beside Michael.
Do you have a card on you? Okay. Well, email me. My email address is there. All right.
You Brenda Green?
Brenda Green.
Oh, Brenda Green.
Yeah,
Hi.
Talib's mother.
Oh, yes.
He said he loves you.
How are you? What's up?
You know, you look too.
That's
Yeah, is Turkish Lover coming out in paper next year?
It's out now.
It's out now in paper?
Paper and Spanish.
Okay.
Really good job.
Oh yeah, he's
you
my
know.
teacher. That's why I'm here.
Did a really good. I was very happy that he was reading the story. Just a couple little different variations, like instead of buffatu, we say buffatu. You know, stuff like that. But he had the rhythm and everything. Great guy.
Yeah.
My phone number?
You want to buy that?
Okay.
Delighted that you
say goodbye, but it looks like Colin is going to invite us to Jamaica.
I hope you'll now be a part of Canada.
I'd love to do anything.
Fantastic. Well, stay tuned. We're going to have our International Writers Festival in the spring.
Yeah.
You should definitely stay tuned through Stacy to what we're going to be doing, because Open Book is certainly going to be playing a part. And actually, we have, I just heard today, Wang Sok Yun.
I'm director of the Center for Black Literature at
Seven Stories Press.
Oh, wow.
About the Korean War and the struggle in a certain village where there were atrocities involving Christians and communists, and it's an amazing book. I just read it, and he's coming, and he was here recently. He was in prison in the 90s during the dictatorship, and then he was let out. Actually,
Yes, so it's all kinds of ways to go. Yeah. Oh, I hope this happens. You will keep yourself free. Yes, I'm going to try. Okay, so thank you very much. It was so lovely meeting you. Nice to meet you. I hope to see you again. What are you going to go say goodbye to? You know, Stacy has all my information, but I could write it down for you as well. Hey, Pedro.
Okay, one chance to even say hello, but I'm going to say goodbye. I have to get a driver, but it was so nice to meet you. And your book sounds really amazing. I'm sorry to say that. I just got it, so I haven't read it. But
It's cool. I'm going to get your book, so I know your book.
And your documentaries sound amazing. Just really.
Thank you. Good luck. Hopefully I'll raise enough money to finish it.
Oh, well, good luck with that. I mean, it really sounds great.
Thank you. Okay. I want to write my info. One is for Pedro. My son Pedro.
Who are you taking with you to see other people?
Who I'm taking with me? It's supposed to be a secret. If the camera was not rolling, I would tell you. When it goes this way, I'll tell you. I couldn't do that. Where? Oh, she's here.
I'm getting one for Nick. Ruth Scott. Hey, how about getting me? I just sent.
Black and white?
I think I sent Demi off last week. How did it go? Was it okay?
Adorable.
Absolutely.
Somebody might get their fuzzy Kango stolen off the back.
Uh-oh. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
One to Eric E. Yes.
No,
R-I-K. No, Eric's her boyfriend. Oh.
What are you laughing at? You like red one?
Yes.
Hey, your email credit. Who was supposed to email me after lunch today, by the way?
And then there's one more.
One more is to Nick.
N-I-K?
N-I-C-K. Find Miss Sam Chang.
Raquel, do you know Selwyn Hines?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine.
He was leaving Princeton as I came in.
Oh, really?
But I got to know him through mutual friends and stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You look familiar. I feel like I might have seen you before.
I do stand up. You see me.
I'm Mike Roberts from Penn.
Oh,
We're so delighted to have you with us, and thank you so much for all you've done and your wonderful work.
Thank you very
Really,
much.
it's a real pleasure and an honor to be able to bring you into this and as a part of our celebration. Congratulations. I met your friend from the University of Michigan, and we were talking a little. She asked me about what the acronym PEN stood for.
When you talking, so wait, why isn't she talking about Brazil? Okay.
That's above world.
Originally, it's first essayists and novelists. Playwrights, we let them.
Oh, wow, so it's still in the mix. Wow. I was just telling Brenda Green, she came up and introduced, I said, you know, winning this award really, a lot of my coworkers and friends from the plant have felt as if it's given them some voice. They felt like that about the book, but it really feels as if it's extended their voice.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that. You know, I'm not sure anybody.
gotta be careful with
there's
this.
anybody who would know. But we have an arts enrichment program, writers in schools and educational programs that was in a UAW facility in Kentucky.
I'll be in New York, but I'm supposed to go, if all goes well, at the end of March, back to Africa. But who knows? That'll, you know how hip hop is.
I know.
So you never know,
I know,
exactly.
I know.
So let's just be in touch.
You go, okay.
And hit me with your information.
Okay. You don't see me in a year and a half, you can barely recognize me.
No, I was really into her. This is one of my best friend's mothers. I've never met her before.
Oh.
Yes. So I'm extremely, extremely overwhelmed that I actually finally met you. I can't believe it.
My buddy Jack.
Sure, can I just talk to you?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hey. How are you?
It's good to see you.
It's nice to see you too.
That's $11.99. You know, and they control the majority of the music.
Right.
So, it's just a question of
Going on now 3 years. And we have a lot of people who've been with us from the beginning.
How many people in your group?
We're about 18 now.
Oh my God, that's like a seminar.
Yep, it's wonderful. We have such great discussions. It's really exciting. We meet in the same building where I live on 23rd Street, down in.
people are just like, look, even if we were all.
Because I was telling Stacy, I used to teach in labor school. I taught at the labor school writing for 9 years at Detroit Labor School. So it's very important for workers to be able to get their stories out.
in a way that's meaningful.
1199 is a hospital workers union, and there are lots and lots of people from Haiti, and we had Edwige Donticat.
Oh, wow.
It was fantastic, actually. We filmed it, and the magic between that audience and that author was not to be believed.
All right.
Well, you keep up the work because you're doing the Lord's work, or somebody's
Somebody's
good.
work.
Did you meet Michael Welsh, my colleague from the office, who used to work in the labor movement?
No, I
he was
didn't.
here, but I think he may have gone. His sister was visiting from West Virginia, but he was.
We were in the same booth.
Are we?
No, like we.
Oh, yeah, I am.
No. Thank you so much. All the best.
No, I mean, but 4-hour test.
My second mother's name is Lydia.
With an I, with a Y.
Y-L-Y. You're L-Y.
Detroit accent, that's right. You know.
It is really, it's so crazy. Everything's just changing so fast, isn't it? Do you, especially for union stuff, because what do you do? I mean, this globalized world. I mean, I'm not, I'm pro-union. I'm, all of that. But it's. I mean, it is rough right now. Just period, because the structure's changing so much.
I think we've got to do some very radical things. I think people have to get out in the streets and let their feelings be known a little bit more about what's going on.
You mean everyone, workers and everyone alike?
It's not just us. I mean, in this country, the rug is being pulled out from under the middle class, and it's like,
where we're creating and let's not even talk about the political situation. For goodness sake.
Really?
I'm gonna let your writer colleague go see you. Great.
Cool. This one's from my daughter, Demasina. She wanted to read that.
Can you tell me how to spell her name?
Sure
I
can.
met her actually briefly. For
Yes,
a moment.
she was really. It's D-E-M-E. Here's my Wisconsin. C-I-N-A.
Where did you get this?
From
Elizabeth?
Yeah. And that's Elizabeth's
I gotta do it. I gotta do it.
Actually,
You did it.
I can't tell you how thrilled I was with your book, man. I picked it. I picked it up. I couldn't let it down. You know how you just like pick a book up and you're just like, wow. Okay, is it like Sam? Is that or Samantha?
Sam or Samantha. Yeah.
I love Sam. Hi, I'm Sam Chang. I love that.
Somebody told me I should use it for my pen name, Sam Chang. But I didn't, it was too late by the time she told me, and I'd already become,
Oh, yeah. That was sort of interesting that question about, what she said that guy said that didn't read. Oh, wasn't that amazing?
Yeah, that was kind of a weird question.
Whoa.
I think she's trying
weird
to
answer.
That's a weird kind of
I'm
answer.
sitting there going, how are letters colored?
Thank you, and congratulations to you.
Nice to meet you tonight. And I can't wait to read your book. I've been so busy and frantic this fall. I haven't
know.
had time
Good luck
to do
in your
anything.
gig.
Thanks. Thanks.
That's amazing. Good luck. I know you'll do. You're a smoker.
Thanks.
Thank you.
What do they do to earn a living? How do they support themselves until fame and fortune comes their way? That's really important to know. Well, she worked for General Motors.
Oh. And how did you start writing? Have you always been...
I've been writing a long time. I started writing when I was at University of Michigan, and I got involved in a little theater group, and I don't know, it was some kind of avant-garde thing. And I found myself writing, it was predominantly an African-American or African orientation, and I felt like they weren't really saying anything that I could directly tie into. So I found myself writing about the islands and writing all these long poems about them. And then I went from there and I started writing about my mother a lot. And then it seemed like I put it down for a little bit and I had a failed relationship. I think that's in the 70s I'm talking about. You know, failed relationships are great for jumpstarting the writing again, right? So I started writing poems to find out something about myself and not about him, but, you know, about myself a little bit. And then I just, by that time I really was in the plant and I started just writing poems about the plant. So I was writing a lot of poems, and then I got, the first stuff I actually got published was with the Latino group in Southwest Detroit. It's called an anthology called La Onda Latina en Poesía, and I got some stuff published in there, and I started performing. My factory stuff, because Detroit's a very, very big poetry town. Very big poetry town. It's gritty, it's edgy, but it's a big, and it's very good, some very good writers in Detroit. So I think that's pretty much...
How did you balance the writing, or how did you realize that you had this passion for writing when you were working in the plant? Or how do you balance it?
You know, it's something that just sort of grew on me, because I didn't realize that I was a writer. I think only very recently, only when that book was published did I begin to look at myself as a writer. Prior to that, you know, I was just writing because I had to write and I had to put things someplace. But I just thought it was something I just had to do because I didn't have any other place to put anything. You know what I mean? And even as much as about a month ago, I was working on another story in my Detroit collection, and it was just exasperating. I just couldn't get it right and everything. I've been working on it for a long time, and at one point I said, I'm not a writer. I can't do this. I can't sustain this. And I guess I hit a point and I just did it. After that.
There's a couple. So when do you find the time to write? Like when you get home from work, or do you do it before you go to work?
Now I tend to write when I get home from work because my kids are grown and they're gone. So when I come home, I walk the dog and I can write. When the kids were in the house, and that's the other thing, my life was so much more complicated. And I was working actually on in the plant, so I had plant hours. I'd get up at 2-3 in the morning. I'd write. And I guess my theory was I didn't need my energy to live my life. I needed it to write. I certainly didn't need my energy to go in that plant and do stuff for them, right?
What were you doing in the plant?
Well, I spent 5 years on the line, on the motor line, which most of the book is based on just being an assembly worker, listening to that. But the rest, I went into skilled trades. And I was the first woman in my trade at the Cadillac plant, to auto layout and assembly trade. It's the engineering trade where you deal with the prototype cars and car systems. So that I still had plant hours, but I wasn't like on a line. So for all my time, really, until just now, when I'm now like off of the tools and off of all that, I'd have to get up in the morning and write. When my kids were home, I'd have to get up in the morning and write because when you come home, the kids, you gotta cook, and I was a single head of household. It was worse when I was married. That's why I had to get rid of that. That's why I got divorced. One of the things was not only was he not good for my kids, but he was not going to let me write. I wasn't going to be able to write if I stayed married. So that was one of the reasons why I got divorced.
That's great. And just one last question. When you talk about the grief, what the grief is about, just what do you think is going to happen, or what can be done, or like
I don't know. What I do, I mean, the grief in terms of the closing of the plant, which is a big grief, and the grief in terms of what's happening with Detroit right now, I do what I am able to do. I march, I protest, but I think what I have to bring to the thing is to write. I mean, I understood that, like, I wasn't writing that book to say anything to anybody. It was just my way of handling the grief. But I realize now, like, that, you know, people are seeing something about what our lives are like. And I'm writing now a collection about Detroit because I know I'll be leaving Detroit soon. You know, when I retire, I'll relocate somewhere else. And it's like I'm just analyzing everything that's going on in the city in the way I tell stories, and I'm trying to make some sense out of it for myself to see what it really means. So that's the best that I can really contribute, because you know, I think that if I don't do that and I get caught up in a whole lot of other things, I won't write, and nobody can tell my stories. I have to tell my stories, so that's what I'm contributing. Besides, I march against the war and all that stuff.
And trying to make sense out of that, what do you find most senseless out of what you're living right now, like in Detroit? Like what doesn't make the most, like what is it?
What makes the least amount of sense to me is the war. The war is like the primary issue for me. I mean, it's like the focal point of everything. And I think there's a lot of things that are very connected with it in terms of the economy, in terms of this insatiable greed of the capitalists and so on and so forth. But it manifesting itself right now in this war and our seeming inability to stop them. And I think we can, but we're not at that point of organizing that. You know, we're happening, we're moving forward, but I hope we're not too late. We may find ourselves too late and having to really fight from way back there somewhere. Okay.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Not really.
No, you don't really care for her?
No, but I love what's going on in England, and I really like Brazilian hip hop. Yeah.
Stuff, okay.
And I like Cuban hip hop. I was like, but I'm not.
Okay. So she was okay?
She was just okay, yeah. I mean, she's interesting looking.
Yeah. I mean, I like the record a lot. So.
Yeah.
With our videographer, and actually you can introduce Brenda to our filmmaker. This is Jay Corcoran, who's our documentarian.
Oh, I met you. I met you at so now this is my colleague. Yeah.
Yeah, introduce her and talk about the National Black Writers.
Right. This is my colleague, Dr. Brenda Green, and she directs the National Black Writers, which is going to be when, Brenda?
March 30th through April 2nd. And Elizabeth is one of our writers on the panel, and we're also doing a pre-conference activity with her and Colin Channer around her new book. The conference theme is Black Literature, Expanding Conversations on Race, Identity, History, and Genre, which really talks to a lot of the themes around writers of color and Elizabeth's book, Prospero's Daughter.
And who are some of the writers?
We have Ishmael Reed. We have several panels. Marita Golden is doing the keynote speech with Susan. No, Juno Diaz is not there. We have a panel on identity and the paradox of race and identity that Elizabeth is on with Ishmael Reed, Emily Rapatoe, who's the author of The Professor's Daughter, and Muhammad Ali. He's a new writer, African writer. Okay, and then we also have a panel on history with Valerie Boyd, History as Narrative, Valerie Boyd, Christopher John Farley, and
what was the whole genesis behind the whole?
Well, the National Black Writers Conference was started in 1986 under the vision of John Oliver Killens, and it founded the conference and under the directorship of Elizabeth Nunez from 1996. Elizabeth turned the reins over to me in 2000 for the 2003 conference. But she directed from 1986 to 2000.
Yeah. And then what we have that is really remarkable that's coming out of the conference is next year you're going to see a series called Black Writers in America. It has just been sold to 200 PBS stations. And it's an 8-part series. 8 part or 13 part, can't remember. But anyhow, with the major writers
black writers, and you're going to see it in February and March, all across the country. And that came out of the Black Writers Conference. Yes, sure did. Yeah,
One of the panels that we're really excited about is we're doing a panel on speculative fiction with Samuel Delaney and Tanner Rindu. I've never seen him. Walter Mosley and Cherie Renee Thomas, and that's going to be a little bit different.
But you were saying that you also wanted to have at the conference a table with pens.
Yes, we want to make sure. Yeah, one of the things we always have vendors at the conference, but we want to focus on literary groups and organizations. So I talked to Michael about making sure that we have pen. We want the visibility of pen at the conference. Have a table with the literature and the programs you're doing. We really see it. It's the largest gathering. Walter Mosley has called it the largest gathering of black writers in the country. What happens at the National Black Writers Conference. And
but also we have a lot of editors come looking for writers. Agents come looking at. As a matter of fact, Walter tells the story that he met at the first conference. That's where he got turned on, meeting the editors and the agents. But I also want to say something really about Michael Roberts. His involvement in this program, in the program we've just had. I think we were always kind of like a committee involved in PEN, and Mike just put us in the center, made us part of the PEN program. He's institutionalized it, which has made like a complete world of difference. And it gives us the kind of clout and visibility that's important, because I think many times writers of color feel marginalized. Today.
I'm sorry, can you say that?
Yeah, okay. I think many times writers of color feel marginalized, by the publishers, by the reviewers, whatever. And to have an organization that has such visibility as Pan American Center, making this approach to writers of color and saying we are going to give an award beyond margins for writers. We are going to have an event such as this is revolutionary. That's it. And I think this is Mike. This is Mike Roberts. This is his commitment. I am absolutely thrilled about that. And if Walter were here, Walter Mosley and Tulani Davis, they'll be echoing this.
I would just like to say that it could not have happened without Elizabeth Nunez. This is really the person who built this award.
That's nice
from nothing.
That's nice of Mike.
What I found interesting, I had an opportunity to be one of the readers for this year's awards, and one of the things that was really evident is the commonality of themes across races and across cultures. Themes. The commonalities in terms of issues around identity, particularly around family and loss. There were a lot of
What about identity?
in terms of how do I fit? How do I maintain my own culture and also integrate? What are the conflicts involved? Integrate into the more mainstream culture, and how do I find that balance? Because it's really kind of Elizabeth talks about the paradox. What is, how do you maintain both, and not be someone who ends up being the one representation of a particular race or culture.
But I think that's what's so remarkable about this evening. If you look at the audience, the audience is almost like an This is remarkable. You're seeing all kinds of ethnic groups.
I think the question that was raised, that the person said people are not as white, I think I can see her intention, but it didn't come out the way she intended it to come. But I think what she was saying is that you see the changing demographics reflect that there's a blurring in terms of boundaries and race. But the way she put it, it came across as if
she missed the politics of it, which is what our committee and PEN's involvement is helping to change. The notion that publishers have
that the only people who read, the audience for books is white. And the notion that if they have a book, if it's by a white author or a writer of color, then that audience for that book is always a white audience. And of course, what you're seeing that is happening today is that that's not true. People are interested in, if the book is good, people are interested in the book regardless of.
And that's why even in just going back to the National Black Writers Conference, which is sponsored by the Center for Black Literature, is the recognition that there is a change, and we need to have some conversations around this. We need to look at, we need to talk about what's happening and the fact that these boundaries are blurring and people are dealing with these issues and these conversations. And there's a need to bring them to light and to make them visible. There's a need to make the issues around race and ethnicity visible, and to make spaces for people to talk about them. And I think organizations like the PEN, these awards and what we're doing at the conference, that helps to elevate the conversation and make people more aware.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Mr. Cochran, I still believe you are in real estate.
He wishes he was.
For next